Hello, everyone. I'm Colin Tessier of WrestleZone.com, joined by John Clark tonight to talk about WWE Elimination Chamber. John, how you doing?
Pretty good. How about you?
I'm good. Like I was saying before I went on the air, I feel good. I'm sorry, everyone, for being absent Monday and Tuesday. Took a much needed chance to get away, just to recharge batteries a little bit. So I'm back, feeling refreshed and ready to go. Here to talk about Elimination Chamber, the last real major stop on the road to WrestleMania. Obviously, we still have a bunch of Raw and SmackDowns to get through, but the last premium live event before the Chamber, lots of things to kind of set the stage for WrestleMania. Good, bad, or in between that remains to be determined, but nonetheless, lots to dig into. So before we do, just want to remind you all, this show, like everything we do here, is available on all of our platforms: SoundCloud, Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, all that good stuff. You know where it's at. So that being said, John, we might as well dive right in and talk about what opened the show. After 10 minutes of entrances, Roman Reigns faced Goldberg. It's funny, I was watching this live when it aired, and I was going to go to the in-laws or afterwards. So I think the entrances started at, I think it was like 12:05 my time, and I was going to leave at 12:25. And I joked, what are the chances this match is over, like including the entrances, by the time I have to go? Lo and behold, it was over. So I got to see this one. Um, this was exactly what you would expect. It was short. It was a sprint. You had some spears. Roman Reigns went for the jackhammer. I held my breath, hoping. Oh, sorry, Goldberg went for the jackhammer. I held my breath, hoping he wouldn't drop Roman Reigns. Thankfully, he did not. Roman wound up choking out Goldberg with the guillotine. So, at least for now, this would likely be the last we'll see of Goldberg. This was the reported last match on his current deal. We can potentially speculate about his future a little bit, but John, at least sitting here tonight, what do you think about this brief title match and the fact that Roman Reigns will officially head into WrestleMania as the champion?
So I was given some crazy looks for numerous reasons. One being that I said this was actually a good match. Now, why did I say this was a good match? I said this was a good match because it did, I think, what it intended, like what the intentions were. So Goldberg, who is known as this 50 mid 50s aging veteran, he threw everything he had at Roman, but it became quite clear that Roman is in the prime of his career. Goldberg was not dethroning an athlete that has been on top for over 500 days. So, predictably, I think it went as most thought it would go, but that's fine because they didn't throw us a curveball and have Goldberg win or anything like that. And Goldberg was essentially submitted. So this makes Roman look even better because I don't think Goldberg. This was the first time Goldberg has been submitted, at least since he returned a couple years ago, if not ever, for all I know. But at
Yeah.
least since then. So this, honestly, I do think this is probably the end for Goldberg. I know that I don't know where that crazy rumor circulated that he could be potentially the one to face Steve Austin at WrestleMania. I do not think that is the case, and I do not think that should be the case. Goldberg is a good draw for the Saudi crowd. They always like to bring legends, so if they want to keep him in that role, that's fine. Let's also keep in mind that Mansoor was not on the card. This might be the first time ever that Mansoor was not on a Saudi Arabia card. They have the firepower and they have the presence over there now where they don't need to do that anymore. But of course, it would still be a welcome thing for the crowd. So maybe Goldberg goes away for a year or two, comes back for one final match or one final short run, whatever you want to call it. But the match did what it was intended to do, and I'm happy with that.
I think there's a lot of truth to that, and this was finally the battle of the spear we were supposed to get 2 years ago. So maybe some closure in a way. Finally getting to see this match. Ironically, as Steven Chambers pointing out, Roman didn't even need the spear to win. Goldberg hit, I think, a spear or two, but Roman won not needing the spear. So kind of a little interesting, little twist on that. But overall, Steven saying Goldberg did all right. Yeah, this was, like I said, this is what you would expect. Not just saying Goldberg hit two spears. I was expecting like five spears total in this match. That's kind of what we've kind of seen with his matches by and large. Just a bunch of finishers and everything like that. But this was fine. I definitely agree with you, John, saying this was kind of did what it had to do. It gave us the match that again we were supposed to get 2 years ago. Gave Roman a pretty important win before WrestleMania. My only real problem with it, how he didn't do the match itself, was they already announced Roman versus Brock. So as I've joked a couple times, other than the darkest timeline where Goldberg would win and face Brock, it just felt like a little anticlimactic when Roman won. Was like, okay, yeah, and that was very much how I felt about the main event. I'll talk
And
about that as well, but
And it's
that,
funny that you talked about how short the match was, although it actually went over the over-under because the over-under was 5 minutes, and it went 5 minutes and 57 seconds from bell to bell.
yeah,
So it was over 5 minutes. There was a couple period where they were like outside the ring walking around. They come in, the spear. Goldberg, I don't even know if he even had a 2 count in his pin, but the point is. It was good for the Saudi crowd. They cheered both, but I do want to say that Goldberg got a bigger face reaction, which
I
is
agree.
good because that's the intention, although it never really happens with Roman anymore. So overall, a decent start as far if you're looking at it from a storyline aspect, it was a very good start to the show.
Yeah, yeah. And overall, whatever happens next to Goldberg, Brian saying Goldberg had a nice run, definitely a nice run. He's a Hall of Famer. But now it's Roman's time, right? Roman, he won this one, no ifs, ands, or buts, practically made him tap out. So good to get that momentum heading into WrestleMania here. Sticking with the match order here. Bianca Belair wound up winning the Women's Elimination Chamber match. We got to talk about this on Monday because we did do the show. Alexa Bliss was the final entrant, so she was the mystery entrant there, as well as Doudrop, Liv Morgan, Nikki ASH, and Rhea Ripley. Didn't get to talk about it Monday. I am very, very happy Alexa Bliss is actually back. At the same time, not always a fan of having someone come back and then lose right away. Not ideal. I thought she looked strong in the match itself. She was one of the last few remaining. Bianca earned the right to enter the match last once she won a gauntlet match on Raw. To me, it's always interesting. It's like it's kind of like having a face win the Royal Rumble at number 30. It's like there's no real sense of overcoming adversity or overcoming the odds. It's like you're kind of getting it is an advantage. Like that's the whole point of why she won that match. It just struck me as a little interesting to have that there. If that's my biggest problem with it, that's a very small complaint. Overall, I'm glad she won. I thought that was the right call. That was her prediction. So now we know that Bianca will go on to face Becky Lynch, who also retained her title at Elimination Chamber. But John, overall, what do you think of the match, the performances we saw, and looking forward to Becky versus Bianca?
I actually thought it was very good booking here. I predicted this match pretty much accurately from start to finish. I did have Bianca defeating Alexa in the end, and that's what happened. The right winner in my eyes, Belair should have won this match. I thought this was also predictable, although some people were dead set on that mystery entrant would turn out to be Alexa winning. Surprisingly, I've seen people starting to turn on Bianca, saying that she's getting stale, she's getting overused, overbooked. I don't think that's the case. I think she has been perfectly booked ever since she lost the title. She was in the mid card for a while with Doudrop, came back up, and now is at the top again. Has a good chance to be the one to kind of dethrone Becky for the first time in many, many years. So they did a good job of not introducing, but continuing some additional feuds here. Ripley and Nikki, even Ripley and Bianca. Ripley and Bianca is going to be a big deal one day, if not this summer. Bianca will have the title. Ripley will be there. They'll go back and forth. They keep teasing that. That's good. Liv Morgan has entered into this a lovable loser, if you will, role where for some reason the fans get behind her like she's going to win, but I never actually thought she had a chance. She didn't. She lost, as to be expected. One day, and I do mean this, one day she will finally win, and that's going to be a moment that they're going to build up to for quite a while because unfortunately, I don't think it's anytime soon with Ronda, Charlotte, Becky, Bianca, Bailey, Sasha, all those in the picture. I just don't think Liv Morgan's going to be at the top anytime soon. And then Doudrop, the last one here. She didn't dominate as much as like she could have because she's looked pretty good on TV in recent weeks. Losing doesn't necessarily hurt. I just wish she would have, looked a little better. Then of course Bliss comes back, basically picking up where she left off. Looked pretty good in the ring. People already questioning where superstars like Bliss, Banks, Liv Morgan could end up at WrestleMania. We already know the two main women's matches. They're usually good for one or two additional undercard matches. What those will be, we have no idea. And then everybody else, of course, gets just shuffled into the battle royal that I think they just call the women's WrestleMania battle
Yeah,
royal.
yeah.
So yeah, that's where we stand, I think, with the women in this match.
Yeah, I think I have no complaints about the outcome. I think everyone kind of involved impressed one way or another. Definitely got the sense, like you said, that we are heading toward Bianca versus Rhea Ripley. Could be a good feud for the summer. They teased at one point they did like the two stalling suplexes, and then they started like duking it out and slapping each other. So and it's funny because they have like this kind of long running connection where when Bianca won the Rumble, that was Rhea Ripley's debut, and she also had an impressive performance. There's definitely some history there, and that could be very, very good. That's agreeing. It's probably coming after she's predicting Bianca beating Becky at WrestleMania. You mentioned Bianca's booking. Brian saying Bianca has been booked like a powerhouse since SummerSlam. I think I would largely agree. I don't know if I'd agree it's been perfect, but there are worse, people who haven't booked in terms of the way the women's division has been handled. So she's picked up wins. She's been still at the forefront of the women's division on Raw. So definitely can't complain about that. But now we're kind of looking forward here a little bit. We do know Bianca will face Becky. And you kind of mentioned it, but is that your kind of firm prediction that Bianca will beat Becky at WrestleMania to kind of get that win back from SummerSlam?
Uh, if I had to guess right now, as far as that match goes, I would probably be inclined to think that Bianca will win over Becky, just because that would be a bigger moment in my eyes. Becky has already been winning for so long. I get that Bianca just won last year in the main event, but I think it's a little different this year because it's probably not the main event. I would
No.
assume this would be a match that could possibly like open night two. We know this will be night two because night one's probably going to be Charlotte and Ronda in the main event. So
Yeah.
this would be a good opener for the second night or a middle match. But to me, slightly different than the one last year, was a bigger deal of being the main event and everything. But nevertheless, Becky eventually getting that loss is going to be a big deal, but I could see them doing something like silly here where she could get DQ'd or by herself or whatever, or something like that. So I don't necessarily think that she could win the title, but I think she'll win the match at least.
I hope they don't do a DQ at WrestleMania. Like that'd be you can do any other show, pretty much any other show. I'll be like, all right, you're building to something, but it's WrestleMania. It's the one night, or I guess two nights, meant for like pretty much your one there's payoffs. Like you want to pay things off, you want to like tell those stories. To me, are in some exceptions, like it's not a time to like drag things on beyond that. I know they have WrestleMania Backlash again, but to me, WrestleMania, pay it off, conclude it, and then on to the next thing. Technically, even though Becky was gone for like a year, she technically has every day she's been on the roster. She's held the title since WrestleMania 35. Technically, so she's never lost the title. So in that technicality, to me, like it's time. Like right, even though she was gone for a while, even now she's had the title since SummerSlam. It's been a pretty good run. So I think it is Bianca's time to win here, and that's what Ness was saying. Makes more sense for her to win. So that's where I'm leaning. Don't do a DQ. Don't, and Steven saying Becky could grab the rope or something. Don't, come on. Just Bianca needs to win, because to me, like, this is the time to have her get revenge for the SummerSlam loss. Because if you don't, then the whole idea of that shocking loss was you're going to build to that payoff of, she's going to win back, she's going to get revenge. And if you don't do that, then it's just like, it feels like you're just kind of a waste of time, or it makes that decision even more questionable. So here's hoping Bianca wins, and because I think that could really help her reach that next level. She's already there, but like to really cement herself in that level, I think that'd be very, very good. But we're getting some support for Becky here. Steven's saying, like to see Becky win. Wouldn't be surprised if Bianca wins. So at least we're seeing a little sense of, if not unpredictability, uncertainty, at least with this match with Denny as well, saying let's go Becky. I mean, obviously Becky's very popular. She's one of the top stars. Would it be the worst thing if she won? No, but I think, in my opinion, at least based on what we've seen, I'm thinking Bianca winning is the right call. But something I don't think was exactly the right call was to have a match, John, where one of the competitors had to wrestle with their arm tied behind their back. Ronda Rousey and Naomi versus Charlotte Flair and Sonya Deville. As you might expect, Sonya Deville, who was wearing a sling, oh my gosh, she ripped it off. It was a ruse all along to try and get one over on Ronda. I don't know exactly what it was about this. I just wasn't feeling it. Like you knew it wasn't going to be this technical like masterpiece anyway, and then you have Ronda's arm tied behind her back. I just thought she was like intentionally so. They really limited her. She couldn't really do all that much. She tried, but especially for someone that she's been in the business technically for a couple years now. But this was her first match technically in the Rumble since 2019, I think, so like to me it would have made it a little, and I know she'll be at house shows next month leading up to WrestleMania, but not the best showing like in terms of an actual match in over 2 years. So I don't know, I wasn't really feeling it, and that's just called it. She said on the SmackDown show that Sonya was probably faking, was probably going to try and cheat your way into this one, and good call, you were right. And I don't know. It just seemed a little goofy to me. Ronda was, as Stephen James pointed out, she was wearing this like karate judo gear, and that like that just seemed a little silly to me. Like I don't know. Like all things being put together seemed a little silly. Ronda made Sonya tap out like with her one arm tied behind her back. It seemed a little interesting. Just wasn't a fan of it, like start to finish. It was fine, but just wasn't really feeling it. What do you think about the stipulation, the fact that we had this tag team match to begin with?
So I thought the real stars in this match were Naomi and Sonya Deville. They did most of the work. I think Naomi particularly stole the show. Uh, in the brief moments that she did have, even though she was the feature, this wasn't a very long match. So at the same time, she was the focus of the match, yet didn't have a lot of opportunities to showcase her skills because the match simply wasn't that long. I think over the past few weeks, she has earned and respected to get a bigger role, at least after WrestleMania. We know they're already in the path they're going to be on now until WrestleMania, but I think she was good enough where she earned a bigger role after WrestleMania. And Sonya also did most of the work for her team and looked pretty good doing so. I don't know what's going to happen at WrestleMania between Charlotte and Ronda. I think it could go either way. Although I do think that Ronda will win, but this just has star power. That's really what it is. The main event of night one, but it has all kinds of star power. And if both women put on a good, lengthy match, it could be one of the best matches in each of their careers. And I really hope that it lives up to that, I guess, hype, because it does have a lot of hype behind it. This is going to be the third time that women have main event in WrestleMania, the second time for both Ronda and Charlotte. So I think it could be special.
Yeah, I hope they build it up more in a more compelling way, because I think any of the hype here is really just based on the names involved. Like the story they're telling, it hasn't really drawn me in terms of like my investment. Where it's really been this story. It's been Sonya Deville, Naomi, and like this kind of and Rousey getting involved as well. Granted, the Rumble was 3 weeks ago or so. Like, that hasn't been that long. And then they still have, I think they said yesterday, it was 6 weeks to WrestleMania. So they do have time to do that. But I think more, there's that inherent star power, but hopefully they'll be able to kind of capitalize and turn that into a good story. But it's interesting to think about maybe anything kind of coming out of this, in terms of Steven's asking, what if, Sonya's, or maybe he's predicting Sonya being the referee for this match. I don't think they would do that. I mean, this match doesn't need anything, any gimmick and any addition. It's Ronda and Charlotte, and I think they would probably feel pretty safe having that on its own. I think it'd be like kind of weird to have Sonya in that spot. Because it's just not needed. If it were another show, again, kind of like the Becky thing, if it were another show, maybe, but it's kind of needlessly put a stipulation on it like that. It's WrestleMania. You can, we were just saying, you've got the names, you've got the star power. Doesn't really need a gimmick like that. But Brian's saying the tag team match here as a whole wasn't needed. I'm not saying it wasn't needed. I think it was good to have this feud on the card to build up to WrestleMania. I just wasn't a big fan of the arm stipulation, and I think that kind of hindered the match just kind of as a whole while they were trying to tell a story. But you know, it was fine. It was fine. It was good for Ronda to kind of get back to be on the show, to be in a match like that. So can't be too upset with that one. Just as a whole, there. Do you want to mention at least a little bit? I didn't mean to glaze over the pre-show. Yes, Miz versus Rey Mysterio was on the kickoff show. Stevenson was surprised that it got put there. Says it looks like the Miz may call one of the Paul brothers to kind of have a tag team match with the Mysterios. That is the rumor going around. Miz said in a digital exclusive he needs to make a phone call, presumably for a tag team partner. And I think Fightful Select reported yesterday on Saturday that might be Logan Paul, he who was at WrestleMania last year. That would make sense. He's already been there. Got to get has a little history there. If so, it's fine. Ray won that match, I should say. Dominic yet again helping distract Miz a little bit. Miz for a second it looked like he was going to getting outsmarted, and then Ray rolled him up anyway. And then after the match, Ray and Dominic teamed up to 619 The Miz. All I have to say, Dominic he's booked like such a jabroni sometimes. Like just like let me get in there and 619 him with my dad and like do like he's such like a sidekick, right? It's just like when are we gonna get to the point where he's his own guy? Like he has some single matches on Raw these days, but he's still very much in Ray's shadow. I don't know what they can do to like counteract that. I think that's kind of inherent, but this didn't help. Where he's like, yeah, I'm gonna get in the ring and beat up the guy my dad just beat because reasons. But and any thoughts on this kickoff show match, John?
Not particularly. I thought it was kind of okay being on the pre-show. It's not really anything that I was super excited to watch. I in fact missed all but like the past 3 minutes because I didn't start tuning in until like 11:50. But from what I heard, it was a decent match. That it's building to something bigger at WrestleMania, and I do think it probably will be Logan Paul and The Miz teaming up against the Mysterios. But you got to keep Mysterio in a relevant storyline somehow, being that he's the cover of a video game coming out in 3 weeks. So
yeah. I mentioned maybe what they could do to kind of help Dominic out here, help the booking in that sense. Brian saying turn him heel. At this juncture, at least, I could not take Dominic seriously as a heel. And I know I'm not trying to like sound impossible to please. Like they need to do something, but like he's I don't know. He just seems like one of those guys like that could kind of, not. We haven't seen him try it yet. Just like kind of based on what we've seen so far. I don't know. I don't know if that's the right call. Like. Because he's Ray's son, like it seems kind of weird, and then he would turn heel out of jealousy for his dad, or I mean, there's a way to get there, but to me, if they're going to do that anytime soon, they would have already kind of set the wheels in motion, which it felt like they're going to do at Royal Rumble, and then that didn't go anywhere, so we were still kind of just stuck in neutral with this one. Tony's saying he thought Miz was going to win, after Dominic got rejected. We've seen them do this several times, where Miz or Ray or Dom is ringside, they distract the referee / the Miz. And then they kind of try to flip the script and have Miz win anyway, or in this case, have Ray win anyway. Thankfully, they didn't quite go that way because it was pretty clever. They had Miz capitalize, go for the school project finale. Ray rolled him up, so that was kind of clever. But I'm ready to know this. Like you said, John, this is based on a video game cover. It's fine, but I guess they're going to keep rolling with it. So we'll be complaining about it for the next couple weeks on Raw. So there you go. But with that, we'll move on to the next thing. After the tag team match, it was Drew McIntyre facing Madcap Moss in a Falls Count Anywhere match. The only real noteworthy part of this match was that Madcap Moss took a really scary bump. He landed right on his head. Thankfully, Fightful Select reported that he was okay, that he just took it. It was a bad landing. He was maybe a little shaken up, but all reports suggest that he was okay, and he was good to go. Drew McIntyre, always known as a safe worker, so he was concerned about this accident, but thankfully it seems like the dodged disaster of this. Moss seems to be okay, so very good about that. Steven saying, yes, that bump, ouch. It looked very bad live, but again, thankfully, sometimes you have those kind of bumps, and it looks a lot worse than it is. Seems to be the case here. So we were talking about it heading into the show, at least on the SmackDown side of things. I thought that in a way, as much as I've made it very clear I'm not a fan of the Madcap Moss gimmick, it would make sense to have him win this match, because otherwise McIntyre won at day one, and in this very match, then he eliminated them both from Royal Rumble, and he's kind of been like dominating the feud overall. So to have Madcap win would at least make a little sense. Drew McIntyre won. And if that's not enough, he also said after that, he literally pointed his sword at Happy Corbin, swung the sword at him during the match, mind you, and then point at him after the match, making it pretty darn clear that's where we're heading for WrestleMania. So before we talk about that, at least for the match itself, Brian's saying it was a pretty good match, at least for Madcap Moss here. It was fine. I'm not digging the character, and I don't know. That it was kind of made it hard to get into to begin with for me.
So I have a couple comments regarding this match that most people probably don't agree with, and I think that that's fine, but all three of these superstars are doing good. They're fine. Now, let me start with Drew, who has, as Fightful Select reported, always been regarded as a safe worker. So I don't want anybody to blame him. They reported that during the incident, Moss was not supposed to tuck, and he tucked, and he landed on his head. Happy Corbin. Now, take him down a little bit of a step here because this was planned. I didn't know this was planned at the time. But afterwards, Corbin pulled him out of the ring to give him some time to like recover, which is it's a pro move. But of course, it was planned, so you can't really say that. But Corbin has been a professional and safe guy for years that keeps getting put into situations where his character work is not the best, not any fault of his own. He's kind of like Sami Zayn. He just runs with the character he's given. He doesn't argue. He's one of the like he's a company guy, really. He is. Madcap Moss also has been improving. He has repeatedly, time and time again, proved that he's good inside the ring. Of course, there are groans about his character every week. He tells terrible jokes by design, may I add. And he's a guy who went through the developmental system as, better than anybody expected. The match was better than it had any right to be, really, if we're thinking about it. It was a sort of a back and forth, more than people probably thought it would be. And it was a pretty hardcore, like, physical match between the two. Now, there's two ways I could go about this, and I'm leaning towards the first that I'm going to say now. McIntyre will face Corbin at WrestleMania. That's probably what's going to happen. There is an alternative world where they could do a tag match if McIntyre could find a partner, or if they wanted to go that direction. McIntyre will probably win and then be elevated back into the main event picture. But I've been saying this ever since August. There's no problem. It's okay that he's in the mid card picture right now. It's fine. Somebody needs to do it. He can't be. People were complaining, me being one of them, that he was in the main event picture for too long. Get the title off of this guy. Then they did, and then he won it back. He finally lost it again. He hasn't really been in the title picture since. That's fine. He's been dealing with a little bit of an injury. So I was fine with the match. It was all right. It's going to lead into probably a rematch between these two. Maybe at SmackDown this Friday. I'll be at SmackDown this Friday in Hershey, PA. I would not be surprised if this match happened this Friday night on SmackDown. But we're going to get Corbin and McIntyre at WrestleMania and maybe a specialty match of some sort. Who knows?
It's just it's if we do, and I think we are. It just feels like one of those matches that while they've had this feud, like it's not particularly exciting. It's like it's going to be an match WrestleMania. It's two popular names, two very talented people. I don't know, and then by then, yeah, it'll be the first week of April. So they've technically been feuding since before day one. So that's 4 months. Well, okay, 3-4 months, maybe like 3.5 months. And it's like they're doing things like to make it interesting.
You cut out for a minute.
Am I good?
Your last two sentences were all muted, so you got to repeat that.
I was just saying it feels like they haven't really done anything to really make it an interesting feud. Where like they had the backstage attack, but like maybe for me I'm so against the gimmick itself of Matt Moss and everything. But it'll be a good match,
understand
as
that.
always. It'll be a good match. If it's McIntyre and Corbin, if it's a tag team match, it'll be fine. It'll be good. Hopefully, then again, kind of I was saying about Ronda and Charlotte. Hopefully, they make it more interesting. But maybe on a longer term sense, I've seen this come on the SmackDown side of things pretty often. Steven suggesting put Corbin and Moss in the tag title picture. I think they should. To me, at least then they'd be a unit, and that they are kind of like. I mean, it's kind of like Ray and Dominic, right? Madcap is like a sidekick, and like, yeah, he wrestles, but like, I think that a team would be a little better, especially considering the fact that they had a SmackDown Tag Title match that didn't actually happen. We're supposed to see the Usos defend against Viking Raiders. The Usos attacked Viking Raiders during their entrance. The match doesn't happen. That was by design, obviously, but I've said this on Friday. I said this, I think, like pretty much every time where they've been on the show. Like, why are these teams feuding in the first place? Like, the Viking Raiders earned a tag title shot, and all we've really seen since then is the two singles matches between the various members of the teams, and one like post match attack. They took the Viking Raiders helmets. I guess that happened. Then we have this. You're just saying about Madcap Moss and Drew McIntyre. Yeah, Steven, I agree. I feel like we're probably going to see us on SmackDown, which is fine. At least in that case, it'll get some time in theory. But they need more tag teams. I think that's more of the story. So Madcap Moss and Happy Corbin could do that.
Yeah, that's an interesting concept and a direction I could see them going maybe after WrestleMania when they wrap this feud up.
There are worse things to do. I mean, at least that'd be a little different than just the Corbin and Moss telling jokes. But can't come on a match that didn't happen. The Usos attacked Viking Raiders, so it didn't happen. So I would assume we'll see that, if not this week, maybe next week on SmackDown. There's no way that they can draw it out to WrestleMania. Like, this is not some like great big feud that has that much legs on it. So we'll probably see that sooner and later, maybe multiple times, because they don't have a lot of tag teams. But something we did see at Elimination Chamber was Becky Lynch facing Lita, defending the Raw Women's Championship. This was a dream match for many. Becky Lynch, one of the very top stars in women's wrestling overall to today's generation, and of course Lita, definitely a trailblazer, a legend, a Hall of Famer, a former champion. We've seen this build going on for the last couple weeks on Raw. I talked about on the Raw show, Lita was a little before my time, so I didn't have as much of a connection to her in that sense, but I thought she had a great performance. I thought she looked good, especially I don't think she's had a singles match in several years. Like, I think she was in some Rumbles here and there, but not a singles match, especially not like a
First singles match for 15 years.
That's crazy, right? That's pretty crazy. Nez was saying she always loved Lita. Brian saying that it was the match of the night. So a lot of support for this one. Steven saying great match. Lita looked great. He thought Lita was going to pull it off. I mean, a lot of the matches on this card had either zero or like next to zero doubt for me in terms of, like, I look at the card, like you had to know Roman was going to win, other than, again, that dark timeline where Goldberg would win. Maybe a little uncertainty with the Women's Chamber match. You had to kind of figure out who was going to win her match. Drew felt like a pretty good lock. For me, at least personally, I felt pretty certain that Becky would win. They would want her to be champion heading to WrestleMania, especially once Bianca won. It was like that feels like a pretty clear direction for that. But Brian also saying he thought Lita was going to pull it off, and that's a sign of two good performers when they're really telling that story and making you doubt the outcome and really think that they might pull off the upset there. And I think there were a couple times where it really looked like it. Lita hit her lead assault at one point. But this is good. Craig saying Lita got a huge pop. She's a big star. Everyone loves Lita. So I thought this was good. Kind of like the Roman match for me. Didn't really have any doubt that there would be a successful defense here, but it was a good win for Becky to beat a legend like that. John, what do you think about the match, the outcome, and we talked about Becky facing Bianca earlier, but at least the match itself here?
This reminded me a lot of the Trish and Charlotte match in 2019, where Lita proved that she could go with the top women's wrestlers of the current generation. This was an 11-minute match that Lita had hung in pretty much the whole time. There was a lot of high spots. Becky ultimately prevailed, but there were times where Lita was giving Becky a run for her money, both physically in the ring and from a storyline aspect as well. Although Lynch did do most of the heavy lifting in the match to basically put Lita into a position to succeed, Lita still did exceed these expectations, and she was a strong addition to the show that I could see maybe doing more work in the future. An article went up on WrestleZone today that I had written where Lita did an interview after her match and said that, never say never. She's not necessarily done. she sees opportunities to wrestle again after WrestleMania if the stars align, shall I say. So what's next? Becky and Belair again at WrestleMania, like we've been talking about. Now, remember the last time they wrestled, which I think has been more than once. There has really yet to be a clean match between the two.
Yeah.
It was grabbing the ropes. It was DQing yourself. It was whatever. So, although some people might be against this, I could see a world where this is a no DQ match or a false count anywhere match to really show some aggression, to give those women a chance to have more than just a one-on-one normal match. We'll see what happens. I still, like I said earlier, think that Bianca will probably win, though. But all in all, a good showing. And at the end, we'll talk about our ratings more from the overall show of the standpoint. But I thought that this match being on the card made it a little bit of a better show than it might have been without it.
I think that's fair. I think a lot of times with legends, they don't perform to this level. The Lita did. I thought Lita held her own with one of the top stars in the game. And like we saw in the comments, a lot of people thought that she actually might pull it off. And again, that's just a sign that they're telling a very good story, putting on a very good match. So that's a sign of a good match. So and kind of looking forward, Steven saying, hope to see Lita come back for another match here. Like you just said, John, she at least left the door open, so it could happen. Maybe for SummerSlam or something, who knows? But no, not a bad match by any means. And like I said, this was kind of a dream match. So to have that kind of marquee addition of, top star today versus top star tomorrow, I agree. I definitely think it helped the show overall, just in terms of the star power, in terms of a compelling match like that. So, yeah, I don't have much bad to say about it, but at least for a minute here, Brian, can maybe looking back for a minute, saying Lita should have won the Rumble. I mean, I don't know. I'm entirely okay with Lita, this being kind of even for right now, just a one-off, saying this is like a transitional feud, give Becky something to do for Elimination Chamber, and then after WrestleMania, you could have, well, we know it'll be Bianca, and then after that, who's to say? But it's always interesting to ask like what could have been. But we know Ronda's back. Ronda's facing Charlotte, and Lita, she's a legend. She wouldn't have really needed a Rumble win like that. She can just say, I'm a legend, let's have a match, and that's what we got. So, and for the match itself, Tony's saying overall it was a 4 out of 5 between Becky and the Queen of Extreme, Lita here. So that's again a lot of support for this match here, and yeah, maybe Lita will come back maybe in the summer. At this point, I mean, it seems entirely open, so I'll wait and see. Something that we'll have to wait and see, but you kind of had to know what was coming, was Brock Lesnar winning the Elimination Chamber match here. Now, this match definitely had several noteworthy things to talk about, start to finish, really. So we had Brock Lesnar winning a match that also featured AJ Styles, Austin Theory, Riddle, Seth freaking Rollins, and the champion Bobby Lashley. Now, unfortunately, Bobby Lashley went down with a very scary injury pretty early on here. He hadn't even entered the match when Seth Rollins powerbombed Austin Theory into his pod. The pod broke and fell and hit Lashley. He was taken into concussion protocol and immediately removed from the match.
Yeah, this Lashley had gotten an injury that we had learned about. This wasn't actually an article that I put up today on WrestleZone. This article that I put up on WrestleZone today indicated that Lashley is going to need a operation on his shoulder. This injury was sustained during his match with Brock Lesnar at the Royal Rumble. So, to give you a little insight about more on this report and what it means, basically, a former writer said that he had on good authority that Lashley was shoot hurt and would be requiring an operation, even though they said he was in a concussion protocol. He's not going to be at WrestleMania likely, and he's going to be out for quite some time. Colin, that's pretty devastating news to hear, considering that he was a champion and was probably going to be in a high-profile match for WrestleMania. What do you make of this? Injury, and more specifically, what do you make of the fact that they've known about this since the Royal Rumble, but just tried to play it cool until basically yesterday?
I mean, it's definitely a bummer, 100%. Like I heard about the injury before I full disclaimer, I watched this match this morning. I watched some of this yesterday, some this morning. So I heard about the injury yesterday. So that kind of pretty significant damper on the mood. I was like, I knew that was coming, then it happened, and then I saw that it was likely pretty at least severe enough that he would need surgery, be out for reportedly 4 months, which would keep him out of WrestleMania. It's really disappointing. I think he's been on such a great run on Raw. Has he been booked the best? No. And we've seen that here and there. He's felt kind of like the second fiddle to Brock Lesnar anyway. It's a bummer. It's really just it sucks. There's no way around it. Tony's saying thoughts and prayers go out to Lashley for a speedy recovery. Congrats to Brock for winning the title. It is interesting in a silver lining kind of way. This would naturally set up potentially Lashley coming back around SummerSlam time ish, or at least whenever he does come back. Let's say it's 4 months from now. That would be roughly sometime in June. So in theory, they could set up a very easy storyline of Lashley comes back if Lesnar is still the champion or whoever's the champion, and you could say, hey, I never lost this title. I want my title back. And you could even do like a babyface Lashley that we haven't really seen for well over a year now, even really 2 years now. And to me, there's something really interesting about that. So it's absolutely disappointing, and again, frankly, just it's rough. It's as someone who enjoys Bobby Lashley and the work he's been doing. But I kind of look forward to that and seeing what they could do once he comes back. Brian sounds like you agree, saying he was hoping for Lashley Lesnar too. We didn't really see that. We saw the first match at Royal Rumble, and then we have this chamber match. So we because of the injury, we even get to see Lashley face Lesnar in this match. So again, in a way, that's kind of a good thing, because then if they get to do the rematch, that makes it a little more special. But it really does depend how the cards will kind of fall there. But that was definitely the big story here, along with Brock winning. Unfortunately, something as disappointing as that kind of did, at least again for me, put a bit of a damper on the mood overall. But again, absolutely best wishes to Bobby Lashley for that one. So other than the injury, the big story of the match was Brock Lesnar just dominating this one. Brock Lesnar comes in. So Bobby Lashley, everyone comes in the match, and it's down to Lesnar and Lashley. Lashley's obviously been removed. So when the buzzer goes off and it's for Bobby Lashley, he's not there. Brock Lesnar kicks his own door down and enters the match. Apparently, I saw some reports that he called that spot. He just did that himself, and that wasn't really the plan. Obviously, Lashley getting injured wasn't the plan, so he did that was a pretty good decision on the fly on his part. So assuming that's true, pretty darn cool. But it was a really cool visual. He just kicked the pod down, enters the match. He's such a beast, man. They call him the Beast. It's for a reason. And then he proceeds just to dominate everybody. I'm talking I didn't see. I think he eliminated Rollins. I'm not sure. He definitely eliminated Styles. I think he eliminated Riddle, and obviously he last eliminated Austin Theory. And we got Steven saying kudos. So everyone else got eliminated. It comes down to Lesnar and Theory. This was my favorite part of the match. I thought it was a little weird how Theory was the last one left, but they did it in such a way. They booked Brock Lesnar like Jason Voorhees, like monster in a horror movie. Like Austin Theory looked terrified, and he was trying to run away, and Lesnar stalked him down, and just the fear in Austin Theory's eyes. And then of course the spot everyone's talking about, Austin Theory got F5'd off the pod, which is a very big fall. Now just asking, is Theory okay? I haven't heard anything about
He's
Austin
fine.
Theory. I've heard,
fine.
assuming he's fine. But the visual is him just chucking the suit off the pod. At one point, I think it was right before that, Theory kicked Lesnar below the belt, or hit him below the belt to try and survive. And like it would anybody, put Brock down for a minute. They get back in the ring, and the second that Brock recovers, he just looks at Austin Theory with murder in his eyes, like you're done now. It was oh man. So I don't know. For me, I knew the outcome 100%. I had no doubt in my mind that Lesnar would win. I thought it was not ideal that Lesnar eliminated everybody, because to have him, and not just to eliminate everybody, but he pretty easily eliminated Jay Styles, eliminated Riddle, just kind of ran through everybody. And then ironically, it felt like he had the toughest time eliminating Austin Theory. But yeah, I think they did it in such a way that it felt It was interesting, right? I was entertained at the very least. I was entertained the way they did it. But yes, Lesnar won. No fans or buts. So, and then shortly, right after he won, they officially announced it will be Lesnar versus Roman Reigns, winner take all at WrestleMania. John, what do you think of this match? And we knew Lesnar would face Roman, but now the confirmation will be winner take all.
Yeah, so I thought that a lot of people got upset about this match for reasons that I have a hard time digesting. So I understand that people are mad because Styles, Rollins, and Riddle were basically disrespected and treated as afterthoughts in the match. But when you want to make Lesnar look so strong, sometimes you have to go to certain extremes. Now, some people just struggle to accept the current crop of rosters are ever going to be main event stars because they keep going back to Lesnar and Goldberg and Roman, and this is the same people. I mean, Goldberg, or not Goldberg, Reigns and Lesnar have main evented shows how many times now? Many. Which is why I think a title versus title match is necessary to gravitate this match to an even higher level. They've
I think
already
that's fair.
wrestled so many times before. Now, to
Yeah.
the people saying that, oh, you need to add Rollins, you need to add Rollins, I don't think you need to add Rollins. I don't think you should add Rollins. This match greatly benefited Austin Theory. You know, he put into a position to get a star rub from Lesnar, and I think it worked to perfection. He served as basically a dummy for Lesnar, and I thought the spots in this match made sense at the end. Now, it's obvious. I thought it was obvious from the start, as you did, that Lesnar was going to win and that Lashley would be protected somehow. I do not think he had a legitimate injury, so that is interesting moving forward. Not much I can say, basically, because the match went how I thought it would. So it's fine. We're going to get a match at WrestleMania, title versus title. That's a whole different discussion that I'm sure we can bring more insight to maybe after Raw tomorrow once we see what happens. But I am not necessarily a fan with the titles being put on the same superstar. So I'm not sure. Like I said, we could talk about that more tomorrow after Raw, depending on what happens, because I'm sure Lesnar will be there and there will be some developments. But the main event was fine. It was okay. We'll see how they build the next 4 or 5 weeks or 6 weeks to WrestleMania.
Yeah, and speaking of that, Nash just saying that she might prefer to have Brock have a WWE title match and then face Roman on night two. I mean, I think I don't know. To me, like Brock Lesnar is he's an attraction. So like to have him wrestle on back-to-back nights, you lose a little bit of the luster there. I definitely agree. Just overall, I don't love the idea. Whoever wins, I'm assuming Reigns is going to win WrestleMania, that he would have both titles. And then that does beg a question, like, would he defend both? We saw Becky Lynch briefly do that after WrestleMania 35, when she won the winner-take-all match. Or would they unify the titles? That could have pretty lasting ramifications on the brand split. Again, these are things we can talk about in the weeks ahead here, but Brian Everett kind of predicting that as well. Definitely, I mean, it's complicated, right? I think there are pros and cons. I think there are things that could be good about either way. I don't think it's great to kind of if they unify the titles, and we don't know that they will. You lessen the ability to have match with stakes, to have storylines with stakes. Let's say they have one world champion over on SmackDown, then in theory they'd be. I mean, I guess you could have, a feud of a person on Raw, a feud of someone on SmackDown, but other times we've seen when they end the brand split, like it's just the world title feud, and then by having the one world title, it's like one less important storyline in a way. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see how that unfolds there. And that's just saying Brock better not become two belts Brock. I mean, with Brock Lesnar, it's always possible. It's always possible they're going to have Brock win. In a lot of ways, if think of who could possibly beat Roman at this point, unfortunately, John, you just said a minute ago, like it would almost have to be someone like Brock to make it make sense. So to have a guy end a 500 plus day reign at this point, which sounds not ideal, but that's where they find themselves because, John, you were just saying, because they keep doing the same things, it is almost a self-fulfilling cycle at this point. Ness thinks she doesn't want Roman to have. Ness thinks she doesn't want Roman to have both belts either. I mean, yeah, I think it's not ideal either way, but yeah, we'll have to see exactly how that unfolds. But it does feel like that is where we're heading. But at least in the meantime, John, Elimination Chamber, set the stage for WrestleMania, crown a new champion, and definitely confirmed or solidified at least the big things we can expect to see at WrestleMania that weren't already announced, like Charlotte and Ronda and that kind of stuff. But overall, what do you think of the show? Scale 1 to 10.
I would give this one a 6.75 out of 10. I thought it was just slightly below average. Out of the 7 shows that WWE has ran in Saudi Arabia, I put this one at 4 out of 7. So pretty much right in the middle. I thought it had its okay moments, but it could have had something a little more. It's difficult to do events like this right before WrestleMania because everything's predictable. They're basically just trying to build, we're 40 days away from the show. They're just trying to build towards that. So what can you do, really?
Exactly. That's where I kind of come off on it. Was it a bad show? No. Were the matches bad? No. But no, like I said a minute ago, pretty much every match felt like kind of a lock in some sense. If they hadn't already announced things like Brock and Roman and so they announced Charlotte and Ronda, then maybe not that one as much, but and even then, even on the show, once you had Bianca win, you kind of had to know that Becky would win. It's like it's very much a predictable. It's predictable, and that's not to say it was bad, but overall here we're getting some rough agreeing or rough range. That's just saying decent show. She says it's an 8. Steven saying it was a 7. Brian saying it was a 7. Saying the Lita and Becky match and the Women's Chamber match were the highlights of the night. Tony is saying a 6.5 out of 10. Ticked off that Becky defeated the Queen of the Extreme. Lita's a legend. I think it was the right call. I myself would have been a little ticked off if they had Lita beat Becky because I don't know. I feel like I said, I feel like Becky going into WrestleMania probably the right call at this point. For me, I'll go for maybe a generous 6.4. Matches were fine to good. But again, just having that almost total lack of any doubt about any of the outcomes makes it hard to really enjoy a show. Again, I had some stuff spoiled for me, but even then, I knew but by and large what would happen, even without having seen some of the reactions online and whatnot yesterday. Just had to kind of figure Brock winning, etc. They made it so predictable that anything else would feel surprising in that reason. So overall, not bad, but hopefully WrestleMania will offer a couple more twists and turns and surprises on the road to it and the show itself. Not just saying the last Saudi show, Crown Jewel, in October was better, and I would agree. I enjoyed that one much more. And hopefully the next one gets back to that level. But we're on the road to WrestleMania here. That was Elimination Chamber. Again, average or middle of the road show. Hopefully you were entertained by it. That's always the goal, to sit down and enjoy the wrestling. And even if it's not totally unpredictable, at least just have a good time watching it. And we try to help you have a good time sharing your thoughts on it and sharing our thoughts about it and just talking all about it. And that's just pointing out it's 41 days for WrestleMania. 41 days. Hard to believe. That sounds weird to me because it's February and it's in April, but no, they said it yesterday. It was 6 weeks away from yesterday, which is Saturday. So clock's ticking. Hopefully they can kind of really ratchet up the ability to WrestleMania and make these matches more interesting, announce some other things as well. But it's WrestleMania, folks. Hopefully it lives up to the hype. Hopefully it's a good show. We will find out exactly how it unfolds, and we'll be with you every step of the way. John, you and I do the Raw show on Mondays. Robert and I schedule permitting to the SmackDown shows on Fridays, and otherwise we're always here for Tuesdays on NXT and everything in between. We've got any number of interviews. We did the hot tag this past week talking about the wild world of wrestling right now, where Cody Rhodes might be coming back, Steve Austin might be coming back. It's a wild time. But yes, all leading up to WrestleMania weekend, definitely going to be a very exciting time. Brian's asking, will there be a stand and deliver show before WrestleMania? Yes, it will be literally the same day before WrestleMania. I think it starts at noon or so, which is crazy because that means it's a 3-hour NXT show or 2-hour NXT show, and then a 4-hour WrestleMania show later in the day. It's gonna be a long day, but there's no shortage of wrestling, no shortage of wrestling to enjoy. That's what we do here. So, John, with that being said, here else we do one thing above all is you can tell me what that is.
Enjoy wrestling.
Indeed. Thanks for listening, everybody.